Good morning, everyone, and welcome to day 2 of our UCJ Quality Assurance Week activities. Day 2, we continue with the theme, strengthening quality in teaching and learning practices in higher education. And today's focus will be on the graduate effectiveness imperative. I'll tell you a little more about that in a little while, but as is right and customary, we will start with prayer, and I will now invite Dr. Brian Wallace, President of Regent College of the Caribbean, to commit our activities today to God.
Amen. Amen. Thank you very much, Dr. Clark, and let me greet the UCJ family and trust that the Lord will grant us a wonderful time today as we seek to again examine the quality of our graduates. The Apostle Paul, praying for the church at Ephesus, he prayed that according to the riches of his glory, that God would grant them to be strengthened with power through his Spirit in the inner man, and that Christ would dwell in their hearts richly. But then he also affirmed that we have a God, now to him who is able to do far more exceedingly abundantly above that which we are able to ask or think or imagine, according to the power that worketh in us. And so, Father, we give you thanks for today. We give you thanks for the work of the University Council of Jamaica in ensuring, in approving, in working with institutions to ensure quality of our graduates, the quality of our students, the quality of our programs. And even as we focus on graduates today, God, we pray that the spirit of power, of wisdom, of grace would rest upon all those who will participate in this seminar today. We thank you, Almighty God, that you're a God of quality, and that you have so equipped, you have provided all that we need, all the academic human resources that we need, oh God, to be able to guarantee, to ensure quality in our institutions. And so I pray, Father, that you would cause that your wisdom, cause, oh God, that your grace will rest upon the University Council of Jamaica as they continue to carry out their mission and their mandate, Almighty God, to ensure quality in education. And so we ask for your leadership, oh God. We thank you for Dr. Clark, who will be leading the session, and all those who will be presenting. And we just pray, Father, that you will do more, Lord, do far more, do much more than we ask, because your word declares that whatsoever we ask in prayer, believing that we receive them, we shall have them. But your word also says you are able to do more than we ask or think or imagine. And so we thank you for the greatness of your power that is manifested, God, to those who really believe and to those who have confidence in you. And so I pray for all the participants, oh God. I pray that the peace of God will rest upon them. I pray for the spirit of participation. And I even pray, Almighty God, for a passion for excellence in our country, a passion, Lord, for excellence among our students. I pray that your excellence, the excellent spirit, will rest upon us. And so I commit all the activities of the day in your mighty and awesome hand. In Jesus' great name, amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you very much, Reverend Dr. Brian Wallace, my colleague from country. And with that prayer, we feel empowered and covered to take on the challenges which face us today. Welcome, everyone. It's really great to have you. If you are a board member, we want to extend a very special welcome to you. If you are a council member, welcome. For those representatives of the higher education institutions who are with us, very, very happy to have you. We know how busy this time of year can be, and so thank you very much for taking time out to be part of this webinar. We're truly, truly grateful and happy to have you. And of course, what would it be without our presenters? And so thanks to all our presenters, whom I will whose names I will introduce in a little while. Also want to thank all the UCJ staff members who are here in support and who are also part of the team of hosts for this webinar, indeed, for the week of activities. You know, Dr. Wallace, we could well say that this is the week for Bible colleges, because I noticed that yesterday, Reverend Earlmont Williams, Reverend Dr. Earlmont Williams was on. Today, you and I are on, and so it's great to have you. Great to have you. Everyone, welcome to this webinar. And I don't think I need to emphasize the timeliness of this this topic that we are going to be exploring today. It couldn't have come at a better time, considering all that is happening. But let me invite, before I get further into this discussion, let me invite Dr. Vivian Quarry, who is a member of council, the use of the UCJ, to bring remarks. Yes, Dr. Quarry, please open your microphone and speak to us.
Dr. Christopher Clark, Principal of the Midland Bible Institute and Chairman of the program for this, the second day of the 18th Annual Quality Assurance in Higher Education Week 2023, being staged by the University Council of Jamaica, representatives of the Ministry of Education and Youth, Jamaica, program participants, the Reverend Dr. Brian B. Wallace, President of Regent College of the Caribbean, who invoked the presence of our Heavenly Father. Presenters, Dr. Michaela Martin, Interim Deputy Director and Program Specialist in the International Institute for Educational Planning at the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization. Professor Shemaine Barrett, Dean of the Faculty of Education and Liberal Studies at the University of Technology, Jamaica. Mr. Lenworth Kelly, President of the Incorporated Master Builders Association of Jamaica, Mrs. Carla McIntosh Gordon, Chief Strategy Officer of the Victoria Mutual Group, higher education administrators, including our principals, teaching staff, practicum supervisors, registrars, librarians, student services and quality assurance personnel, and external examiners. Mr. Najee Murray, Director of Public Relations and Communication at the University Council of Jamaica. Distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, I am honored to bring brief remarks to this August Assembly on behalf of the Chairman of the Board of the University Council of Jamaica, Professor Errol Morrison, and his other members, as well as on behalf of the Executive Director, Mrs. Althea Heron, and the members of her team. The theme for this week's event, strengthening quality in teaching and learning in higher education, and today's sub-theme, the graduate effectiveness imperative, are most appropriate for the times in which we live, especially at this critical juncture when policymakers and educators in our post-pandemic global village exuberantly wrestle with the challenges of preparing us, its people, with the skills and competences necessary to live ensconced between the fourth and fifth industrial revolutions by creatively developing and recalibrating education policies, among others, while at the same time being earnest in working towards the achievement of at least one of our pre-COVID-19 realities, that of attaining the imperatives of the United Nations Vision 2030 Sustainable Development Goals. It is within this context that the webinar that is being presented today has been planned. We expect that we will provide an exploratory reflection of both the internal and external quality assurance systems required to produce effective graduates who, as articulated in Vision 2030 Jamaica, are equipped with the skills, the knowledge, the attitudes, behaviors, and values that appropriately meet the ever-evolving needs of the workplaces for which they have been prepared. It is anticipated that as effective graduates, they will become productive citizen workers in charge of their own personal economic advancement, contributing to national development. Additionally, it is intended that this webinar will provide an opportunity for employers to provide critical reflections on the effectiveness of graduates who currently serve in their employ, and share possible strategies and solutions to improve and thereby meet this imperative. It is our hope that by the end of today's presentations, we will all be so edified that we will be motivated to act within our educational institutions and spaces to engender an intentional reflection on the importance of graduate effectiveness in higher education, a thoughtful identification of the internal and external quality assurance systems used in higher education in an effort to strengthen graduate effectiveness, and an unswerving commitment to the adoption of possible strategies and solutions to improve graduate effectiveness in the workplace. May we all be so inspired that we shall continue our quest for the achievement of excellence as the University Council of Jamaica continues to assure quality in higher education. In an effort to court success, may we work not only to elevate quality at the tertiary level, but more so at all levels of the education system, as it is only as the foundation is successfully laid that we can be assured of the strength of the edifice. May God bless you all as together we listen and participate.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Corey. Thank you very much for those words of encouragement and exhortation. And colleagues, feel free if you want to applaud. You know, the reaction buttons are there. Please feel free to use them. All right. Thank you again, Dr. Vivian Corey, Council Member of the University Council of Jamaica. And so, colleagues, we are about to get into the meat of the matter, as we say, the reason for which we are, the primary reason for which we are gathered today, to consider strengthening quality in teaching and learning in our institutions, and to focus primarily on the graduate effectiveness imperative. You know, this is there was once upon a time when in universities because of small numbers and the fact that they catered to an elite, we might say. The question of quality never did come up for discussion, but as higher education has become more massified, if I can use that word, more persons, many more persons accessing higher education, the question of quality is always going to be there. The question of how effective are our graduates is always going to be raised. I remember as a principal in a former life, I I sometimes grappled in signing the certificates of students who had completed the program. You would come upon a certificate for you to sign, and in terms of the grades, the student had accomplished enough and had met the requirements, the academic requirements for graduation. Yet there was sometimes a lingering question as to whether this one and this one were ready. What kind of impact would they make upon leaving the confines of the college? Many years ago, as a young lecturer too, I recall the then principal withholding the certificate of a particular student, even though she had met all the academic requirements. The principal determined that she was not ready to receive that piece of paper which stamped quality, which would speak to her quality. And so she was allowed to leave college and to gain employment, but had to work for some 6 months, if not more, before, and a report coming from her employers, before she was actually granted the certificate. Colleagues, as we move into online teaching and learning, it is fair to say also that our assessment is being challenged. Yes, the recent artificial intelligence facility of ChatGPT is challenging the integrity of our assessment, or could challenge the integrity of our assessment. These are questions that we need to grapple with as we contemplate this this imperative which is placed before us. How effective are our graduates? How are we going to measure that? How do we improve our teaching and learning and our practices to ensure, or to at least assure, quality in the graduates we send out? We have a team of erudite presenters to address the topic. I am just going to introduce them by name and give you some further information on our first presenter, and the others will be introduced in a more fulsome way thereafter. So I would like again to welcome Dr. Michaela Martin, and they're going to be presenting in the order in which I call the names now. So that's Dr. Michaela Martin, Professor Sherman Barrett, Mr. Lenworth Kelly, Mrs. Carla McIntosh Gordon. Those are our 4 presenters. They will speak for different lengths of time, and as they speak, if you have questions, comments, you may put those in the chat, but we will also provide at the end an opportunity for you to open your mics and ask questions. All right. There's also going to be a poll. Yes, each presenter will have a poll which will come at the end of their presentations. All right. So let me introduce our very first presenter, Dr. Michaela Martin. Dr. Martin is a program specialist and is the interim deputy director of the International Institute for Educational Planning. She has a track record of more than 30 years in research and teaching in higher education, policy, governance, and planning. Since 2004, she has been in charge of an international research and training program in the area of internal and external quality assurance in higher education. Some 6 years ago, almost, she has been working on a research on flexible learning pathways in higher education. And as I said earlier, she currently serves as the interim deputy director at UNESCO's International Institute for Educational Planning. This she's been doing since last August, as in August 2022. Dr. Martin is well published, and you would do well to look her up even after today. Search for her publications and make the most of them. So thank you very much for accepting the invitation to be here, Dr. Martin. And I now invite you to give us your presentation. Dr. Michaela Martin.
Thank you so much, Dr. Clark, for this very warm introduction. And let me first tell you how pleased I am that and how honored I feel that I have been invited to this important event. It's for me also an opportunity to continue collaboration with the University Council of Jamaica. And you mentioned, Dr. Clark, the project that I have led, the research that I have led on flexible learning pathways. So we had the chance to work with a team from Jamaica, from the University Council of Jamaica. Dr. Dawn Barrett was part of the team, together with Dr. Carolyn Hale, and to produce a case study on flexible learning pathways in higher education in Jamaica, and also looking into the quality assurance implications of more flexibility in higher education. But let me start to share my screen to pull up the PowerPoint that I will be presenting. Is it visible now? Can you see it? Yes, it is. It is? Oh, wonderful. So the topic, I think, is of course meant to fit into the topic of the day, graduate effectiveness by focusing on employability. And what I want to do in my presentation is to refer to a research that IEP has conducted on on innovative and effective modes of internal quality assurance. As we all know, it's the one that is done by higher education institutions. And when we were looking at the question, we were also looking into how internal quality assurance systems in universities around the world deal with the issue of graduate employability. Okay, so when we were looking into this question of graduate employability, we were looking also into a number of definitions. And I think it's quite interesting because they bring up some of the tensions that we are facing when we are discussing the issue of graduate employability and its linkages with internal quality assurance. But I think a basic definition that we found and that we found quite useful is the definition of employability as a set of achievements, skills, understandings, and personal attributes that make graduates more employable and successful in their chosen occupation, which benefits themselves, the workforce, the community, and the economy. So graduate employability in the way that we have looked at it goes beyond the first labor market entry. And we have to think about balances also, the imperatives of different times in a graduate work life. There is, of course, the entry into a first occupation, but we have to think graduate employability also along several job changes that may need to be made throughout some graduate's work life. And I think that already creates a little bit of a question on what to focus on when we are looking into the issue of quality and how to prepare graduates for the labor market. And when we are looking at the question of employability, we have to think also about the fact that there are different stakeholders in the higher education community that may have different perspectives on this. There are, of course, the students or the later graduates themselves. They are the employers, and there are the academics. So when we discuss graduate employability, we have to take these different perspectives into account, and they may not always converge on the same issue. So then we may have some tensions there. Maybe the student is looking into employability to ensure a first labor market entry, but academics, of course, or the academic community may want to take a longer term perspective. Now, a little bit of the background, why we focused on the topic, and this is just some very broad figures, but it tells us something about the expansion of higher education systems across the world. So in 2000, in the year 2000, we had something like 100 million students, and in 2020, we are already at 240,000 students. So this is more than doubling the number of student numbers worldwide. So we have a great expansion of higher education systems in terms of student numbers. And this is reflected also when you look at the gross enrollment ratio. The gross enrollment ratio is, of course, the share of higher education students in comparison with the age group population, which concerned age group population of higher education, which is typically 19 to 23-year-olds. And what we see here is the GER, the gross enrollment ratio worldwide. So it has moved in the year of 2000. It was in the order of close to 20%, and today it's in the order of 40%. Then we can see also that some region and also some countries, in some countries, the student numbers have evolved more quickly than in others. For instance, we see in North America and Europe it's still progressing, but to a lesser extent than, for instance, in the countries of Latin America and the Caribbean, and that has to do with the starting point, of course, because, let's say, the expansion phases were a little bit earlier in Northern America and Europe, and now many countries worldwide are catching up on the gross enrollment ratio. Now, what's within this expansion, so what we have seen also is that there are growing concerns about the mismatch between the labor market needs and graduate profiles. So we have what we have seen also as an increased share of unemployed people with tertiary education. And that is, of course, not something totally new. We are concerned with graduate unemployment, I would say, since the 80s already. So this is a concern that is with us, but we have seen also that it is an increasingly important concern. And this is one of the reasons why we decided to include this aspect of employability in our research on internal quality assurance. So there is this mismatch between the labor market needs and graduate profiles. And as a consequence, there's, of course, more pressure on higher education institutions to adapt their education and training to the labor market needs. And employability is currently seen as a major outcome of higher education. So there is an expectation on higher education institutions to show that their graduates are employed. And as a consequence, one has to look at all kinds of mechanisms to ensure more fluidity in the discussions on what academic quality is and how it can integrate employability and internal quality assurance systems. I would say, I would argue also external quality assurance systems. So it's also the work of the quality assurance agencies, but I think primarily the work of higher education institutions to look into mechanisms to ensure that there is regular collection of information on the employment of graduates, and with an intention also to use this type of information also for discussing the development of study programs. So our institute conducted a research on, as I mentioned, innovative and effective internal quality assurance systems. So what we did an international survey jointly with the International Association of Universities, who has a big database of some 20,000 higher education institutions. We had I would say a reasonable response rate of some 7%, is of course not 100% far from this, but it gives a reasonable picture. And we were asking about existing mechanisms in the internal quality assurance systems of these universities. But we wanted to go a little bit deeper and study the effectiveness and the perceptions of the effectiveness of these mechanisms in a small sample. So here these are the 8 universities, and we set up teams. We worked with teams from these 8 universities, and they were doing surveys inside the university to study the perception of the effectiveness of existing internal quality assurance mechanisms. And what I'm sharing now is really some of the findings on the issue of graduate employability and internal quality assurance that we collected from the work, both from the international survey, but also from the in-depth work that we conducted with these 8 universities. And here this picture, so this is a picture actually, so which is the cover page of the synthesis publication, but these are pictures from the campuses of these 8 universities. I just wanted to mention them. This is a little bit anecdotal, but it's nice to know. So what came out from this research is that there are different views on the role of the university regarding employability. So in some of the universities that we worked with more in depth, some of the 8 universities, so it came out that in some universities, employability is part of the strategic orientation of the higher education institutions, and in some others, they insist in their presentation, in the way that they define their objectives, they insist much more on academic quality without ever mentioning employability. And the reasons behind that lie partially in the national context. That has to do with the level of unemployment that we find in the sector, but it has to do also with the extent that employability is a part of the national policy concern or not. Of course, the type of higher education institution plays a major role when it is an institution that is more by nature, more professional in the types of programs it offers. Then, of course, the employability concern is much more prominent. And it has to do, of course, also with the orientation of the academic offer. You know, when we are mainly in an institution that is offering traditional programs, less professionalized programs, then, of course, the issue of employability may be quite different than in one where, you know, the strategic orientation is different. So we have variant views between universities, but even inside universities, we have also varying views between the faculties. So I think this is also something that we have to take in account when we are looking at universities as an entity. Now, overall, what came out from our research and the surveys that were conducted inside these 8 higher education institutions is that IQA was seen as having a positive influence on graduate employability and through 2 different types of mechanisms. So there's on the one hand an indirect link between IQA and employability because IQA practices enhance a university's reputation and graduate employability as a consequence. Somebody who graduates from a reputationless higher education institution has better chance to find a job than somebody who comes from an institution that is perceived as of lower standing. But there's also a direct link between IQA and employability because IQA helps to build strong interactions between academics and labor market representatives. And that is what we found quite interesting. And now I will talk a little bit about the tools. But let me first now ask our colleagues from the University Council to set up the poll on the strategic orientation. Do I need to do stop sharing? Yeah, okay, so here's a question to you. In my opinion, with regard to their strategic orientation, higher education institutions should emphasize predominantly academic quality or employability. I saw that we had some 80 colleagues being connected online. Now some 60 have expressed their opinion. Let us wait another 30 seconds before I start commenting the result. We are now at 68 opinions, 70. Okay, it seems to stabilize at 71. Okay, so I think, colleagues, you can see the result. So we can see that actually there is the question is, you know, we have 45% who say that higher education institutions should emphasize academic quality, and there's 55% who say it should be employability. Yeah, so that is quite interesting. So there's actually quite an interesting spread. There's a slight preference, of course, to employability, but not that much actually. I thought that I would have thought that given the topic of our debate, it would go quite strongly on the side of the employability. So it shows that this is a question where there is not so easy consensus. I think one can easily argue that employability is part of academic quality. I think it should be in a way. That is a little bit the argument of my presentation, but we can see that this is really a question where people do not necessarily agree so easily. So thank you very much. Maybe we can, I continue with my presentation then. Can I just close it? Okay, so that's what I do now. And then I move on with my presentation. So here we are now moving into the more technical side of the issue, into the side of, what are the existing IQA tools and processes that help us to enhance employability. So just to give an overview, we were studying 5 different mechanisms, looking into a little bit more into depth starting. So we were investigating this question through our international survey, but then also with the 8 in-depth university case studies. So one mechanism is about involving employers, professionals, and alumni in development and review of academic programs and curricula. And then the second one is about tracer studying. A third one is about employer satisfaction surveys. A fourth one is about the monitoring of internship. And the fifth one is about using job market data, job market analysis in order to assess market needs and job opportunities. So here is some data from our international survey. So we were asking the questions: to what extent do these tools and processes exist in your university? So what we saw there is a predominance of curriculum development involving professionals. 79% of our sample said that this was available in their university. And then on the curriculum review involving professionals, it was 75%, so this is really relatively high. And on the monitoring the quality of internship, it was 72%. So these 3 were mentioned, came out from the international survey as being quite predominant in our sample. Now, let me go a little bit through these different mechanisms. So the first one is graduate tracer studies. So if you are familiar with this is surveys which are conducted among graduates to investigate the process of job market integration, employment conditions, fulfillment, and knowledge. And this is also quite a commonly used IQA tool for the analysis of graduate employability. We can do tracer studying. Typically, that would be done 1 year after graduation, but sometimes it can be done also 3 years after graduation. And then, of course, depending on this time span you are investigating, one is investigating different types of issues. So the graduate tracer studies in the sample of our 8 in-depth university case studies were perceived as an effective tool to enhance employability by case universities, but there were also some issues with it, and that often at times the response rate to graduate tracer studies was not that high. Second tool, job market analysis, which is an analysis of labor market needs for certain types of graduate profiles, and they play the function to identify job opportunities for graduates of existing programs. So the results are typically used to improve either study programs or student support services to enhance employability. So the data is gathered by direct labor market surveys. It can be done online or offline through paper questionnaires. And often universities produce annual reports on the job market with an analysis of employment opportunities for graduating students. But this is often data that is used also by career services inside the universities, where students go and can consult to investigate about labor market opportunities, either before they choose a study program or while they are on it and they want to have more information on specializations that they can choose. So they were seen overall as having a positive effect, but the specific effect varied widely according to the way that the analysis was used, because it could be, as I mentioned, either inputted directly into quality analysis or otherwise used also by career services. Now, involvement of employers in study program development and revision, as I mentioned, is something which is relatively frequent and common. This is, and the difficulty is actually to organize the dialogue between employers, because what we see often at times is that there can be committees, standing committees involving representatives of employers and labor market stakeholders, and they take part into annual review processes. They take part in the discussion, and then they suggest changes to the curriculum. So this is something which we have seen in one of the universities, the University of Bahrain, where such a structure of standing committees involving employers was present, and we thought that this was a good practice. Another good practice comes from the University of Duisburg-Essen in Germany, where they're also using tracer study data in the annual quality conferences. So at the University of Duisburg-Essen, a number of study programs are submitted for review. So it's not all the study programs every year, but it is a selected number, and is organized in such a way that after 5 years, all study programs are reviewed at least once. And then they organize annual quality conferences, and where a number of data is actually used and discussed by internally this time. So it's data about it's about the progression of students, how successful the students are moving through the system. But it's also created tracer study data, and then they discuss the implication of this data to make recommendations on the improvement of the study programs, and produce quality reports on those study programs that have been reviewed, and these quality reports enter into institutional evaluation, in a 6-yearly institutional evaluation. So what is interesting about this mechanism also is not only that we are using graduate tracer study, but that it is also used for the discussion, and the conclusions are feeding back also into institutional planning processes. That we found also quite interesting. Huh? Employer satisfaction surveys, they measure the extent to which employers are satisfied with graduates in terms of competencies and skills in the workplace. And of course, the importance of this type of data is to get a direct feedback from the users, I mean, from the beneficiaries of higher education graduates. Huh? And the employers in such a survey are typically asked what they see as the strengths and the weaknesses of individual graduates in comparison with other university graduates, or with reference to a specific academic program. So what we saw in our survey is the data remains often with university management, and it is not often enough widely shared. So, and that was some of the shortcomings that we were seeing in many universities. We were hearing it from many universities that, there are these graduate tracer studies, they are conducted, but not necessarily very well used at the point in time when study programs are analyzed. And so the two examples that I was mentioning are more of an exception than the general rule, but yet they represent good examples. Now, let me come to my conclusion. So I think the general context that we have seen with a massive expansion of higher education enrollments, then also an increasing concern with graduate employability, it actually pushes for a more systematic involvement of employability-related IQA tools. So I think that is that's something that's the background, and this is why we ask the question, you know, to what extent does your university use these type of tools, and what are you doing with it? There are contextual factors that influence the perceived importance of employability, and there's not a general agreement. We have seen it also in this group. The participation and of graduates and employers in the review of study programs has been formalized in many universities, but what is often missing is a kind of organized stakeholder discussion on the data that is available, graduate tracer studies on specific programs, employer surveys, job market analysis, and the conclusions and the recommendations that are feeding back then into the review process and decisions which are taken on the renovation of study programs. So yet a word of caution, and I have said at the beginning, what we have to accept is that we have to organize a stakeholder discussion, and there are differing views. And at the end of the day, we have to reconcile different perspectives. And there is a perspective, of course, of the labor market. There's also the perspective of academics. And at the end of the day, it's all about dialogue. And it's all about finding, you know, constructive solutions to many of the challenges that academic programs are facing. And often at times it's not so easy also to anticipate actually the needs of the future. So in an increasingly turbulent environment, it's not so obvious always to know what we need to anticipate. And when we plan for change and innovation, we also, of course, have to take into account the future of job profiles, yet they are changing very rapidly. So that creates a new tension here that we also have to take into account. So I want to stop here. I thank you for your presentation. Of course, now I think we will hear also from some of the higher education institutions, and that's actually, of course, an opportunity to have already this type of stakeholder debate that I was arguing for.
Good. Dr. Martin, did you have another poll?
Yes, that is true.
Right.
I think there is another poll on IQA tools available in the higher education institutions. Yeah, maybe we can. Yeah, okay. Thank you very much.
Colleagues, I encourage you all to participate in the poll. It's not confined to pre-selected persons, please.
Okay, we have some 35, 38, 40 positions. Oh, it's moving up rapidly now.
Yeah, I think they're more.
Needed a little bit of reflection, maybe.
We have well over 100 participants here, Dr. Martin. So.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So about half of the participants who have who took the poll.
Mhm.
So we have already two tools which are coming out quite strongly, which is the graduate traces studies, 61%, and the the monitoring of the quality of internships, which I think is really important. Much less on curriculum development involving alumni, but that seems to be the poor cousin here. Okay, but there is it's interesting. I think there's quite a good spread actually of tools. So I can see that the IQA tools are already quite well in use among the higher education institutions in Jamaica.
Yeah, I think they do.
Okay, so I think maybe it's interesting. So I think I can stop here.
Yeah, so we got tracer studies, monitoring internships, and curriculum development as the predominant.
Mhm.
Okay.
But maybe this menu gives also some good ideas on how to evolve practice.
Indeed. True.
Okay, thank you very much. In the interest of time, I'm stepping back for now.
Good. Thank you very much, Dr. Martin. And the poll results are quite interesting. Thank you for the polls as well. Colleagues, you may have questions or comments you'd like to share about Dr. Martin's presentation. We will not take those just now. We invite you to you may put them in the chat, or you could make a note of them. We will have a time at the end of the 4 presentations when we will have interaction with the presenters. Okay, so if you just make a note of your questions, and we have one other poll, Dr. Henley, or that, yes.
We can move. Oh, okay, great.
Oh, this is the other poll. Right, so here's another poll for you, colleagues. Please respond. See, we have leveled off there, Dr. Martin.
Yeah, I think so. It's yeah, also quite interesting. So I think there is in the menu something which is interesting for many higher education institutions in one way or the other. So I can see, of course, that involving employers, professional and alumni, the development of study programs is very much at the top, 52%, and then followed by tracer studies and job and employer satisfaction surveys, and then very closely followed also by job market analysis. So yeah, I think it seems that there's some interesting ideas around there.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. So remember now, please, you add the questions that you may have for the presenters in the Q&A section, and we will take them after. All right. Thank you. Thank you very much again, Dr. Martin. I'm going to invite now our second presenter, and she will be introduced by Dr. Minot, our Director of Accreditation. Dr. Minot.
Thank you, Dr. Clark, and good morning, everyone. It is my happy privilege to introduce to you Professor Shermaine Barrett. Professor Shermaine Barrett is an adult education and workforce development professor at the University of Technology, Jamaica. She holds a PhD in work and human resource education with a major in adult education from the University of Minnesota, USA, and a master in adult education from Mount St. Vincent University in Halifax, Canada. She's currently the Dean of the Faculty of Education and Liberal Studies. Her research interests include adult teaching and learning, online teaching and learning, workforce education, STEM, and TVET education, and teacher professional development. I would like to welcome Professor Shermaine Barrett, and I invite her at this time to make her presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Minot. Ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, good morning. First, let me thank the UCJ for the invitation to make this presentation this morning. You know, as I advance in my academic career, the subject of quality has taken on more and more relevance to me. And so it is an honor to share with you my thoughts on this subject this morning. I would like to begin by sharing with you that if my slide will move, oh my gosh, what's happening here? All right. Pardon me, I don't know why my slide is not moving all of a sudden. Oh my gosh. All right, let's stop sharing and start again. Oh, oh no. All right, so let's go to here. All right, give me a minute, please. I think I know what is happening. Okay. All right. It's taking up my time. Okay. Out of order. Let's see slideshow. Right. So I hope I won't have that trouble anymore. So I'd like to begin by acknowledging that our discussion this morning is not just important for us locally, but that it fits right within the international dialogue and treaties that have been signed. So the Sustainable Development Goal to which Jamaica is a signatory does speak to this matter of quality. So it speaks in Goal 4, it calls for quality education for all. And from my perspective, that makes quality education a right, a public right. But the document goes on to speak to ensuring equal access for all women and men to affordable and quality technical, vocational, and tertiary. And it didn't stop there. It says, including university. And that to me says that quality is a right at all levels of the education system. It is therefore significant that we are discussing quality and quality teaching and learning in the higher education sector this morning. So for the rest of the presentation, we are going to look at what is quality education, because we should set the base, and two types of quality. We are trying to define the graduate imperative, since the title that I was given had a focus on the graduate imperative. Then we are going to draw from examples from other sectors other than education. And then from that, we'll pick out some inputs that impact quality education. We look at quality within the process and the outputs. Okay, so in terms of defining quality, the literature is clear on the point that defining quality continues to be difficult, with some arguing that quality can neither be defined nor quantified, and others asserting that quality is subjective and dependent on individuals' perspective. However, if we are to discuss this matter here this morning, I believe I need to proffer definition. And so I speak from the perspective that quality education is one that is responsive to its context, it's fit for purpose, and it is holistic. In terms of responsive to its context, it suggests that context informs what people need to know, what they need to be able to do, how to live together, and the skills needed for individuals to develop their full potential in responding to the context. Therefore, the curriculum must be relevant, it must be valued by the students, it must be valued by employers, and it must be valued by the stakeholders within the wider society. And therefore, I believe if we should take on quality from that perspective, complaints like students not being adequately prepared would subside. When we look at fit for purpose, again, I want the fit with society is also critical, but I want to use the work of Clark, 2005, when he made the point that education must do more than provide intellectual stimulation and prepare citizens for the world of work. He argues that education, and I agree, must serve a wider human purpose. And from a holistic perspective, education should therefore develop the intellectual, the socio-emotional, the technical dimensions of the individual. So it calls for a holistic approach. Another way to look at quality is through what Salis 2002 describes as the procedural concept of quality and the transformational quality. The procedural concept of quality is concerned with measuring up and ensuring conformity to a predetermined specification. In education, quality from this perspective is demonstrated through a quality assurance system that is intended to support consistency in service. The perception of this presentation, though, of quality is grounded in the transformational quality, which has to do more with the continuous improvement and organizational transformation. Transformational quality is not achieved through adhering to systems and procedures, Salis argues, but through the exercise of leadership that establishes a vision that translates into service and builds the structures and organizational culture. And those are two key points that empower staff to deliver quality. And so we want to look at those things that enable staff to deliver quality. Then we want to know, so we have defined quality. We want to define the graduate imperative. From my perspective, I interpret this as individuals who will serve the public good while advancing their own well-being. This means education must therefore be holistic. It must aim for the development of the individual's technical work-related skills. And that's important to me. But it must do more than that. It must develop those non-technical skills, and it must facilitate their personal growth, development, and transformation, and ultimately promote the development of a fully functioning, humane society. That's the graduate imperative from my perspective. Now let's look at some lessons from the field. Some of you may like this TV show like I do. It's on the Food Network channel, Diners, Drive-ins, and Dives. One of the things that always stand out for me is that very often when the owners of the establishments, whether it's a diner or a drive-in, when they're asked, how do they maintain quality in the food they serve? Because here these establishments are known for their quality, but not just quality, the consistency in their quality. And so one of the answers they all give is the need to have the right ingredients. And then they go on to say how they often travel to faraway places to source the particular raw material to ensure that they get the same flavor consistently. I believe the takeaway here is that quality output is the result of the raw material used. Additionally, they go on to speak about the type of equipment and the implements that they use. And it was the first I was making that kind of connection with the tools you use in the kitchen and the outputs that you get. But they argue that that is also important. The other experience that I would like to draw on comes from my own work as a project manager to build a swing bridge over the Rio Grande Valley in Portland, Rio Grande River. It has never left my mind the importance of sourcing the right kind of lumber to ensure that the flooring would last a long time, even though it would be subject to rain and heat, plus the wear and tear of foot traffic across the bridge. Again, quality of the raw material enabled quality output. Importantly though, those quality inputs must be exposed to the competent hands of the chef or the builder, as in my two cases. So quality output also depends on the competence of those who are using or employing the use of the raw material. Like the chef, like the master builder, the quality of our output as educators, who are the graduates, is dependent to a large extent on the quality of the raw material, the inputs which must now be exposed to the competent hands of the lecturer, the teacher, the member of faculty. And of course, a critical input is the students themselves. But this paper, this presentation is not going to address the students. We are taking that as a given, and then we move on to look at some of the inputs that impact quality. And I've identified 4, and I'm certain you could think of some others. I'm thinking about the curriculum, the teaching resources, human resources, and technological infrastructure. From the perspective of a curriculum, the curriculum should, if it wants to be fit for purpose, if it wants to be responsive to its context, it must be current, it should be relevant, and should meet the needs of the students, the job market, and the society. And as we had just heard in the previous presentation, one very practical way here is to engage the professionals in the field as we pull those curriculum together. But in the 21st century, the curriculum should be technology infused and should be focused on developing innovators. Those are some of the things I put forward. But importantly, it must also include those transferable skills, or as we learned yesterday, the essential skills that are critical for the 21st century. And we could go on, but given my time, I'll move on. The teaching resources. Institutions should invest in those resources, technology, and facilities that support learning and provide students with the tools they need to succeed. The focus is on quality inputs. Here we are speaking about access to libraries, computing resources, access to lab facilities, technology-enhanced classrooms, and for me, very importantly, discipline-specific technological devices, especially for those of us who are involved in professional training. A biggie for me now, and for you, I believe, is human resource. And you know, in an academic institution like universities, there's a wide cross-section of human resources that make it work. Today, however, I want to look on members of faculty. So key to quality in the teaching learning process is the quality of faculty. Empirical research shows that an important factor in determining the gains of student achievement is teacher quality. And so instruction should be delivered by qualified, experienced faculty, and I would argue with strong academic credentials and a commitment to teaching. It speaks to the faculty's content knowledge. And I know traditionally universities focus on this aspect, their content knowledge. But it's very important to note that more and more faculty pedagogical content knowledge is valued as critical in maintaining good standard and quality. That is their knowledge of different teaching strategies and methods. But also important is the faculty's knowledge of assessment strategies. This is fundamental to the quality consideration. And we will look a little bit more on assessment in the other section of this paper. And so what this calls for as we seek to improve the quality is the continued faculty learning and professional development. And there are some institutions, and kudos to them, who have a well-established professional development unit. This is critical. It's critical, especially in this time when there is change is rapid in content, in the tools we use. So this is important. And the final area here is technological resources. Colleagues, we cannot discuss matters related to quality teaching and learning in the 21st century without giving attention to the technological infrastructure in our institutions that support teaching and learning in the online environment. More and more students are requiring engagement in this online space because it's flexible and allows them to be able to go on with other aspects of their lives while they are studying. So those are some of the considerations. When we get to the process of the teaching and learning situation, the first thing we identify teaching strategies, the learning environment, assessment methods, technological considerations. When we look at teaching strategies, what I'm arguing for is that a student-centered approach which encourages active learning using diverse methods is going to be critical as we engage all types of learners in order that they might engage and obtain a quality output. I argue too that it should be, the teaching strategies should be technologically infused and as that is important within this context. Let's look at the learning environment. And the key point I'll make here is that creating an engagement and meaningful learning-centered environment that is cooperative, collaborative, and supportive, enabling all students to be free to participate and to engage is going to be critical in this quality focus. We turn our attention now to assessment methods. And assessment here refers to assessment of students' learning outcomes, as well as the quality of the program. I argue that student institutions should have a comprehensive assessment and accreditation process that measures not only student learning outcomes, but also the institutional programs. We must assess the quality of our programs and services to ensure that they meet the needs and the expectations of our stakeholders, the students, faculty members, other stakeholders. And that very important for me is that assessment of student learning outcomes should include assessment of learning, which we are very good at, which is the summative approach. Assessment for learning, which is the formative assessment. And as assessment as learning. And here, assessment as learning focuses on assisting students to be active, engaged, and reflective learners as they go about making the connections between the feedback they get from their lecturers on their work and their learning? How do they improve their learning through those feedback? And then we look at technological considerations. Here we consider the use of technology in the classroom, both as an aid to teaching and as an aim in the teaching process. Technology as an aid serves the purpose of enhancing learning processes. So for example, the use of web-based learning, simulations, games, those things enhance the learning process. But those also boost learner engagement and motivation. We all know that motivation is a critical part of student success. And these learning resources also, technological resources also help to facilitate collaboration among learners, which is very important within a constructivist environment. And so the technology as an aim really supports the learning. Technology as an aid, sorry. Technology as an aim speaks to building the skills and competencies of students to use the technologies that are relevant to their discipline area, or I should say area of discipline. And I want to draw from engineering or the technical field. So for example, we might want to ensure that our students know how to use the CNC machine. We want to let them know that how to use the AutoCAD software. That's technology as an aim. And so we now move on to the graduate imperative. Now, my argument in this quick presentation is to say when we interrogate those areas of input and the process, it should result in some cognitive attributes, behavioral attributes, and attitudinal attributes of our students. Among the cognitive attributes are those academic knowledge, the academic quality of our students. But it also must relate to those industry-related content knowledge or the employability skills and competencies and capabilities of our students. Among these within the 21st century is digital literacy. So the curriculum should have that built in. Among the behavioral attributes that I am highlighting this morning are technological competence and skills. That is the ability to use those. But in addition to that, there are these attributes of problem solving, collaboration, innovation, communication skills, oral and written. And critical to this process is critical thinking and creativity. Those are, for those of you who are aware of the 21st century skills, those are the ones that I'm just naming here, and that's critical for them. From the attitudinal side, the literature speaks about the importance of resilience. And don't we know that? Let's look at how we had to pivot in the COVID-19. The students, the graduates should be flexible. And a concept I came upon some months ago, maybe a year or so, is learning agility. And how do we produce students who are learning agile? And I go back to say the learning environment, what we do in the process, how we engage them in our assessment would help with that. And finally, under attitudinal is a stress tolerant graduate. So in conclusion, I'd like to make the point that to discuss strengthening quality in teaching and learning practices in higher education without looking at the inputs in the process, the curriculum, the resources, quality of faculty and technological infrastructure, would be to set ourselves up for failure, or at minimum, some dissatisfied stakeholder, and the graduate imperative would not be met. Secondly, the process must be such that students are engaged in a learning environment that is student-centered, technologically infused, it's welcoming, it's engaging, it's supportive, it's cooperative and collaborative. My position is the graduate imperative demands this. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Barrett. That was Professor Charmaine Barrett, as she shared with us. And colleagues, again, as we thank Professor Barrett, you may have questions or comments for her. We ask you to put them in the Q&A feature. Look at the bottom of your screen. You will see that question and answer feature. Go there, put your questions, your comments, and we will take them later. Professor Barrett, you do have a poll, don't you?
Yes, there are two polls.
Two polls. All right, let's take them. There we go. We invite you, everyone, to participate in this poll. Let me welcome those who joined after the official welcome was given. I see that the number has grown significantly since then. Welcome, very happy to have you with us. Please join in and start with this poll on socioeconomic base. Quality higher education is a foundation of a strong socioeconomic base. Do you agree or do you disagree? And we have just over 70, going closer to 80 persons responding. We'll give you a couple more seconds and we will close the poll. Prof. Bart, are you seeing the results?
Yes, I am.
Okay, great. So you can
And so what this is saying is that we are in agreement that what we do in our various institutions is impacting on the socioeconomic base of our country.
Without a doubt. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. And you may want to go ahead and let's take the second one now, please. Here we go, 21st century classroom. Quality in the 21st century classroom is affected by several factors. In your institution, which of the following will you give priority attention? All right, so please go right now and participate in this poll. Curriculum, human resources, teaching resources, technological infrastructure. To which will you give priority? Barrett, someone says you just took them to scholarly church just now.
I hope they come away learning in the church. You know, in church, sometimes we go away, we are not impacted. Well, I hope they are more impacted.
Sounds like converted to me.
Right, that's right, that's true.
Right.
All right, we seem to, it's slowing down.
No,
And
getting more
I guess
we're getting more.
Getting more.
Yes, the numbers are moving into the 70s now.
Okay, so but it's what it suggests is that we are giving equal focus.
Yes.
And I like that.
Yes.
I like that because that's what the quality is all about. If you give attention to one over the other, there could be challenges. But I do know giving attention to all, it is in itself challenging.
Indeed.
But yeah, this is good. I like to see that. I like to see that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Remember now, if you have questions, comments for Professor Barrett, put them in the use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. We'll take them later. Colleagues, we're very mindful that you've been sitting all morning, and if we were in person, as in face-to-face, we would have taken a coffee break. So we're going to do a water break at this time. We're going to break for 5 minutes. Please watch the screen. The countdown will be there, and we ask you to return to your seats before the 5 minutes have elapsed. So let's take that break right now and get back to your seats in 5 minutes. Thank you very much. I think we have exhausted our 5 minutes. I hope you did get a chance to refresh yourself. Welcome back, everyone. I do hope you use the opportunity to get some water to refresh yourself. We are going to have the next two presentations without any break, so get ready for those. The next presenter is coming to us straight out of industry, straight out of the field. So I am going to invite Dr. Lisa Henlin from the UCJ to now introduce Mr. Lenworth Kelly. Dr. Henlin, please go ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Clark. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Mr. Lenworth Leon Kelly is a professional engineer with 32 years of experience in civil, structural, and geotechnical engineering analysis, design, and construction. He is employed as a director at the civil engineering and construction firm, Nubian One Construction Limited. Currently serving as president of the Incorporated Master Builders Association of Jamaica, Mr. Kelly is also a past president of the Jamaica Institute of Engineers and a member of the Professional Engineers Registration Board Enforcement Committee. Mr. Kelly holds a Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering from the University of the West Indies, St. Augustine, Trinidad and Tobago, and he is a Jamaica College Old Boy. Mr. Kelly is a member of Swallowfield Chapel's oversight team and serves the Boys Club Ministry and the Marriage Ministry, which he leads with his wife, Trudy Ann. Discipleship of young adult males is a passion of his. He is also a member and past president of the Kiwanis Club of Ligani. Mr. Lenworth Leon Kelly.
Thank you, Dr. Henlin. So Chairman, Dr. Clark, are you guys hearing me?
Yes.
Yes, other presenters and attendees, thanks particularly to the UCJ for the invitation extended to the Incorporated Master Builders Association to participate. And I won't have a PowerPoint presentation. I'm just speaking, having a conversation about how we as industry sees graduate and our suggestions. And some of these will come out as we go along. So when a graduate comes to industry, typically, immediately they don't add value. That's usually the case. They don't add value as they come. They come pretty much with theory, they come with the academics qualifications, and they need to experience and understand the practice in order to develop. And it takes time for them to appreciate, operational procedures, to understand design approaches, to experience the construction methods, because these are actually by experience in the trenches underground. And some of it may be skewed towards construction because that's our industry. But there's wider application. And importantly, to work with and manage personalities. And in this initial phase of employment, what you tend to find happening is that the employer really is investing in the graduate pretty much, because there's no immediate value that the graduate brings to the employer. And this is often the case, no immediate value as if they come day one, they start working and generating output for which the business can earn revenue, right? So effectively what happens in most situations is that when the graduate is employed, they are pretty much subsidized. And that takes place until the graduate is experienced enough to progressively now add value to the business, right? And this is what employers, a lot of other entities know. The education really has made them trainable. So when you hire them, you train them to create the outputs you want so the business can earn from it. It is critical that the student be apprised of the potential for employment in the job market. We see so often students seem to, okay, I want to go to university and I want to do a degree in a particular field without, it may be, you don't know what may have fueled that desire for them to do that. Perhaps it was, somebody who had influence on them before. But a lot of times what they seek as a course of study, it's difficult to find a fit in the job market. And so it is important, we feel, for students to be in a continuous way, be appraised. And I'll speak a little later, but let us say, especially those students at the secondary level who need to make decisions. Usually, the high schools may have like careers day and so on. This may better influence their course selection. And so I just want to put a suggestion there that typically our universities who may have done the labor market surveys and so on, and will understand in a better way perhaps what the industry needs, can perhaps advise those at the secondary level so that information is passed on, or find some other way of engaging so that those who are seeking to come into university do make choices, the correct choices, and that they really can find employment when they are done. So an awareness of which sectors are experiencing growth, which are in decline, which are evolving, and also those which have the greatest potential to facilitate the life objectives of the student. That awareness must be there. It is equally important that and this has been mentioned by the two previous presenters, that tertiary institutions along with industry and government really should be forecasting the demands of the labor market for future workforce and adjust programs to suit as necessary. And so we see instances where government has plans And those plans are not shared in any detailed way with wider industry or the industries which those plans will affect. They probably are known by a few. We often say to government, listen, let us not wait until you're ready to start spending the money. Let us know years beforehand what may be coming. Sit with industry, sit with academia, and let us, so academia will now be empowered to focus training to meet those, the potential demands that will come in the future. So these are some of the ways in which we have to be proactive. Then you can now structure your programs and so on to meet what is to come. Oftentimes, well, we react because government doesn't make it clear, and then you're trying to catch up when you're already in the stream and swimming against the tide. You know, so we need to be pivoting our education and training efforts to really meet the needs and not just relying on standard curriculum. Importantly, I believe students should be consistently exposed to the practice of industry in those sectors, in the sectors they are interested in order to develop what we call a real appreciation for what exists in the world of work. And so with this in mind, we suggest that academic schedules should include a significant component of exposure to the practices of the industry in which employment is ultimately desired. Because you find oftentimes, yes, a student comes to you, a graduate comes to you and is pretty much lost. There's no appreciation even of some of the basics, some of the rudiments, and some of what I'll speak on in a little bit may help us to understand why that appreciation is not even there in any reasonable way, right? So we really would love for the students to be consistently exposed, in a consistent way that can be worked as a part of the curriculum, or you structure the courses. I think that would certainly be helpful, right? So that the practices in the industry, they get in, you don't just pass by, yes, there are field trips, yes, and these are good, but you kind of want a consistent kind of work through whether students have to go maybe every other day for a couple of weeks, however that works out, but that is very, very important. And in order to facilitate this, certainly a greater synergy would be necessary between academia and the industry. A part of doing this could be facilitating industry professionals in presenting to students. And there's an example of my own experience. I did engineering at UA St. Augustine. And there's a course called Civil Engineering Practice, where each week they would bring a professional in. It's not you just attending the course, that's what would give you the grade. It's not anything, I don't recall that it was something that we had to do an exam for, but it was very important. And so the professionals would come in and share with us on aspects of the industry and matters relating from ethics, critical ethics and integrity to even engineering failures, and you get to understand some of the malpractices, so on, in the industry. And a lot of that has stayed with me to this very day. This, for me as a youngster, this was eye-opening, because all I was exposed to was my academics and some lab work and a few field trips and so on. So this really kind of helped to settle in us, as it were, an appreciation of what's out there, what we will face. And we had none of that on paper in any of the classes. We get coming to us as employers in the industry, graduates with a range of grades, academic performance, and those with first class honors and those who seem to just barely make it through that class. And let me just suggest here that maybe there's some ignorance on my part, because I I don't have any knowledge of studies that correlate academic performance to career performance. I think you call them tracer studies or something like that. But I would love that to be shared with us so I can share also with our industry. You know, the work environment really becomes an equalizer for all graduates. And performance, what we found is that performance in the place of work is influenced more by the non-academic, non-technical skills. And these include, you know, the adaptability, things like critical thinking, or you analyze and evaluate, or for you to arrive at some conclusion and form a judgment around a particular matter, because that hits you every day. How you communicate, you know, is there also, there's this thing that we'll call a teachable spirit, because sometimes, you know, graduates will come and there's sometimes a cockiness. So that's what we would put it. And so it's in a sense a resistance to learning, because in our industry, you will find somebody who is of a lower, before I call it academic rank. So you may have a foreman who is an extremely experienced carpenter at putting up form work. And so you have a young graduate engineer who comes to the field. He has to allow himself to be teachable by that foreman, because that foreman has the experience, what works in the field, not just what you think you can figure out on paper. And so that's helpful. Those that grow quickly, that move ahead and progress and perform, I tend to find that there's a teachable spirit within them. They allow even the laborer with a shovel, they learn from, they take things from those who are the experienced without holding this thing in their head. Well, I am the engineer here, because yes, you are the engineer just by title, but you really know nothing. So that kind of a teachable spirit is what I know some of the academics may have a more technical term for it, but that is how you're not choose to do it. Your attitude, the consistency of things, the drive and the energy, these things become key ingredients in your progress. Integrity, a fair days. You're not necessarily stealing anything from anybody, but a fair day's work. When you come, a fair day's work, right? There's also respect, and you must be a team player, because, you know, in industry, I think no one stands alone, right? And for me, these are perhaps a greater influence of the quality of employee performance than the actual academics. The IMAJ, just as like a side note, provides bursaries for students in engineering at UMONA and also at the University of Technology. And the approach has been not to reward the best performing students. I've never done that. Because typically, what we have found is that the best performing students are most oftentimes reasonably well resourced. So what we choose to do is to, with faculty, identify and provide support to students with average grades, who probably have financial and domestic challenges, but they display the correct attitude. And so our immediate objective is to try and improve academic outcomes rather than waiting on outcomes to reward them, right? So we try and be proactive. Graduates, for their part, you know, there's this expectation that, you know, they'll have a nice job, and that will enable them to pay their bills and fulfill, you know, their dreams of perhaps owning a home or owning a car or investing or vacationing, whatever it might be. But oftentimes the reality is not so. Often there is no job. Your student loan payments are due, frustration sets in. And in this scenario, attitude is what will bring you through. And I'll just speak to a few other things. I am heading to close. As an employer, when I receive a resume, I go quickly. From a look at the qualifications, I go quickly to the experience, which is where I give the greatest weight. If I'm interviewing 10 graduates for an engineering position, everybody comes out with a degree, but I will now move for experience. And that forms a big impression in the mind of many employers. And what we see, one of the things we're seeing commonly now is that we see many graduates applying for jobs and do not have any summer employment experience, neither in their chosen field of study or even a related field. It seems most have opted for summer employment, mainly overseas, it seems, and in areas unrelated to their field of study. And really, this is noteworthy because of the weight that we give to the quality of the part-time job experience. And so this weighs heavily when we do the interview and evaluation process. We're not quite sure why this is so, but in the past, in past times, well, certainly when dinosaurs roamed the earth, when I was a youngster, and all of us looked forward to getting summer jobs in the industry which we sought employment. And really that is how a lot of us ended up with employment when we graduated, because you'd have found that the companies would come down to St. Augustine and do the interviews. And once you had done summer employment with them before, that weighed heavily in their consideration. So many of us had jobs to go to before we even graduated, right? So I'm not quite sure what has changed, if there's any disconnect between industry and academia in that regard, but it's worth having a look at, right? We also encourage youngsters. You may not have gotten a job when you graduate. You may not get the job in the time you want, but what we encourage is to volunteer, offer to work for free, even part-time, so experience can be developed. Because ultimately, what we will pay for is experience. We'll pay you for that. It don't matter whether you were paid or not for that experience, but you have gotten that experience. That's critical, right? And so we certainly encourage them to take that route. You know, it seems many don't have a plan if they don't gain employment in the desired field, right? And we certainly suggest that, you know, they come with an attitude that any day, their work attitude must be such that any day they are not at work, it's noticed, they are missed, right? So attitude is a critical, what they call soft skill, certainly for us as employers. And there's a scripture I want to close with that guides. It says, Colossians 3:23-24, it says, whatever you do, work at it with all your heart, as working for the Lord and not for human masters, since you know that you will receive an inheritance from the Lord as a reward. It is the Lord Christ you are serving.
Well, right. There you have it from the man of God, the president of the Incorporated Master Builders Association, Mr. Lenworth Kelly. Thank you very much, Mr. Kelly. And remember, colleagues, use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. Make your comments, write your questions for Mr. Kelly. We will have him addressing them after the next presentation. We are going to move right into that other presentation at this time and invite Mrs. Shandale Remeke McFarlane to introduce our next presenter, Mrs. Carla McIntosh Gordon.
Thank you very much, Dr. Clark. Good morning, everyone. It is with pleasure that I introduce to us Mrs. Carla McIntosh Gordon. She is the VM Group's Chief Strategy Officer and was appointed as a VM Group's Executive Leadership Team member in August 2019. She oversees the VM Group's program management and group strategy portfolios. As head of strategy and the project management office, she has overall responsibility for the development of the group's business strategy, providing technical expertise in the execution of the strategy, as well as measuring the business performance. While playing a critical leadership role in the delivery of the strategic objectives of the VM Group, a significant portion of time is spent honing and developing the team's leadership potential. Mrs. McIntosh Gordon holds a Master of Science in Computer-Based Management Information System and a Bachelor of Arts in Linguistic Honors from the University of the West Indies. She is a certified project management professional with the Project Management Institute. She's also a certified balanced scorecard professional and a member of the International Association for Strategy Professionals. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Ms. McIntosh Gordon.
Thank you, Shandell. Good morning, all. All protocols observed. I'm gonna jump right into it. I know we're a bit behind. Anecdotally though, I wanted to bring to the attention of the audience that all three women have structured presentations. The sole man didn't have a structured presentation. It's not the first time I'm seeing something like this, whether in academia or otherwise. But the fact is, it didn't take away from the strength of the presentation. And as we look at that, and we're talking about education and higher education, one of the things I thought that was interesting is that as we look at the gender issue in higher institutions, in higher education, do we not start to look at how do we bridge the gap on how men learn, how men present, and therefore, how do we catch up to bridge the gap between the two? So it's just something that I observed. It's anecdotal, but I keep seeing it in presentations. I wanted to bring it to the attention of the audience. Now, there were a couple of points that I took from the earlier speakers, and I thought the presentations were just so rich. Dr. Martin made mention of the enrollment ratio, and she spoke about the mismatch between skills required in the labor market and the graduate profiles. She asked a very provocative poll question on academic quality versus employability. And as I answered and I thought about it, I think I saw one person mention it in the chat. Can you actually divorce the two? Professor Barrett made mention of our building structure and our organizational structure when we talk about quality, quite important. And then she said something which was key for me, the graduate imperative, serving the public good, building non-technical skills. That is what holistic learning looks like. Mr. Kelly made mention of in our industry, and what he said is applicable across all industries. The application of knowledge, working with and managing personalities, and organizations are investing in the graduates. At first, when they come in, we are investing in these graduates. We call it at VM talent management. And so those talents are subsidized until the graduate learns the knowledge that can help to bring fruit to the organization. With that said, I am gonna present now and share my screen. I'm gonna go quickly because I know that I am why am I not seeing my screen? Okay, here we go. All right. So it is taken into perspective this point number 6 on the functions of the UCG. to assist in the development of higher education institutions by providing professional advice and services for the development and improvement of programs. And this is what our topic is about. And I'm hoping that at the end
Sorry,
of this,
Mrs. Gordon, did you intend for us to see your screen?
yes, are you
Oh,
seeing
we're
it?
not-
No,
we're
we're
not
not.
seeing it. You may
We're
want
not
to,
seeing
did
it.
you click share?
Okay,
Sorry, thank you.
thank you.
You probably identified it, but didn't click the share. Look at the bottom there if you see share. Yeah, there you go.
All right, beautiful.
Oh, voilà.
Thank you. Thank you so much. All right, so here we go. All right. So it is to assist in the development of higher education, and this was taken from the UCJ's website. And I'm hoping that at the end, that what we have all proffered here today is able to provide you with insights that will lead to a continuous improvement program. Let me just get this down. So I found this matrix, a graduate effectiveness model, overall graduate employability, and what it involves. So we spoke about academic performance, we spoke about technical skills, but we went further to talk about personality, communication skill, leadership and motivational skills, teamwork. And that definition, as defined by the Emerald Insight, spoke about graduate employability model being an essential aspect of higher education industry. It evaluates the success and ability of a particular institution in producing work-ready graduates and has been used as a performance indicator for a higher education institution. So this is a model that we take into consideration when we are looking at graduates. And when they step out of that higher education institution, they become, for our industry, for the corporate industry, talent. So here is where we start and start to frame what our talent looks like and what we want our talent to look like given the environment that we work in. So we have a lot of external influences impacting us. When we talk about globalization, we're talking about the contracted world. We're talking about Jamaican corporates must be able to work to international standards. And with a saturated local market, we start to look externally for regional growth. So graduates must be prepared to work to international standards and not just the local workforce. We talk about population shift and that impact on the workforce. If globalization has opened the doors, then the pandemic has kicked off the hinges. So our graduates are competing in an international workforce, no borders. So corporates can recruit from anywhere in the world at competitive prices, and where these resources can work remotely. But this can also work in Jamaica's favor because we can prepare graduates for working anywhere in the world while residing locally. The funds stay here and are plugged back into the economy. Disruptive technologies, I believe Professor mentioned this. As we talk about AI, blockchain, automation, she mentioned AutoCAD in the engineering industry. Are we using these tools in the programs so that students are off air, or graduates are well off air when they start into the work world? They're made ready. They're technologically ready. When we talk about another impact of world financial uncertainties, high inflation, fluctuating interest rates, the impact of war, Ukraine war on supply chains, the recent crash of the Silicon Valley Bank and what it means in managing an entity. We have to understand, and the graduate has to understand and apply risk mitigation strategies. Corporate scandal, SSL, and how the employee must have a, excuse me? I think, okay, yeah, somebody needs to. I believe we need to, I'm hearing someone in the background. Okay, right. The how the employee in corporate scandals must have a good idea of what good governance is and how to apply it. So the graduate effectiveness program is closely coupled with talent strategy of the organization, and with the largest asset being the people, we must align the talent with the business strategy. So the VUCA world in which we operate, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous, requires us to constantly restructure and reinvent ourselves as corporates. And thus, the demands for different graduate persona have shifted in this sector. Yeah, so what are we looking for when we look at the graduate of today? So what we found is that there is a disconnect, a divide. There's a disconnect as how our because our graduates are not able to apply crucial skills, and we hear it as a recurring decimal, such as critical thinking and problem solving in the world of work. There's a disconnect with how our organization understands the emerging generation, how they think, their values, their attitudes, and their beliefs. How then does the corporate ensure a cultural fit and alignment for the world of work? So too are we asking, how effective is the graduate program? So too are we looking inwards as corporate from ourselves to see, are there shifts that we too have to make based on the upcoming generation? There's also a disconnect given the changing demands of the workplace and what is needed from the new employee. All right, so we talk about the required attitudes and skills. What are we looking for? We're looking for the ability to handle change. Their understanding of the change management process will help to reduce their levels of stress and resistance towards change activities. And if they are not in an environment where it's constantly changing, it can be intimidating. We have seen it, it is very real. Understand the impact of culture and influencing culture. A positive workplace culture is one that is built on meaningful work, open communication, and core values. And in essence, it attracts and retains employees. We're talking about leadership. Mr. Kelly mentioned this about leadership, the ability to motivate and work with others. High morale among employees reduces distractions and motivates them to devote their energies to achieve organizational goals. Innovation, and this doesn't necessarily mean technological innovation, but really the ability to identify opportunities to do things better. He or she needs to be able to identify what needs to be changed and obtain the right kind of information to propose a case for change. So you see more what is coming out, it's soft skills, you know, separated apart from the technical skills or the theory that they have learned in school. Team membership, understanding that collaborative problem solving leads to better outcomes. So what we find are that when our graduates, naturally, when they leave higher institutions, they are individual contributors. How do we make them team members? Digitalization, their understanding on how leverage technology leads to efficiency. A joint study by Microsoft and Qualtrics found that employees were 121% more likely to feel valued by their company when they had a high quality digital workplace experience. They were also more productive, engaged, and happier at work. So, how does the VM group recruit? Previously, we had looked at academic qualifications, we were impressed with honors, we were impressed with what they actually brought to the table from an academic point of view, yes? However, we have shifted that practice. And so this is what we assess team members for. Culture fit. Do they fit into the culture? Because it can get abrasive if there's a divide on what you believe and what we believe. Soft skills and technical skills. So we want both, and we look for both. team player over individual contributor, innovation, the ability to solve problems, and of course, values. What do you value? This is kind of small, but I have spoken with Chanel, can share the presentation, but I just want to give you a bit more about how we retain in the organization, what our program looks like. So this model that you see here is a competency model, is a talent management model that we use once the employee comes into this space. So every job is scored on some core competencies, and those are both soft skills and technical skills. We do an assessment on each team member to see if there are any gaps at all. If there are gaps in what should be your core skills or your core competencies, then we do an exercise. So these are all the possible competencies. Each job is not assessed on all of them, but which are applicable to the job. Then we do a skills assessment. Where there are gaps, we have a three-pronged approach to filling those gaps. We do experience-based learning, where team members are provided with developing-place assignments to enhance their skills, or stretch assignments where they're provided higher level assignments in preparation for a new role. We do formal learning, where team members are exposed to courses, workshops, conferences, or readings to enhance or learn new skills. And we do coaching, where team members receive positive and constructive feedback from supervisors, peers, mentors, or coaches to change a behavior or better a skill. So from that, we have what you call a 70-20 model for corporate learning and development. And what we place a lot of focus on, and if I might go back to this, experience-based learning is where most of our emphasis is, where 70% of the work is done, because we find that persons learn better when they do. So we do have learning events where 10% is assigned, the workshops, the webinars, the online learning. We do have the peer-to-peer exchanges where we assess on a 20% percentile assignment, communities of practice, subject matter networks, coaching, mentoring. But as you can see, the majority learning from experience, it simply does not get any better than that. And so, even though we would have done this exercise as part of our talent development program, certainly we have found that it is not enough to solve the core issue as it develops when this is formed, or this partnership is developed when a graduate enters the workspace. It means that some efficiency is lost because the entity looks to bill the employee while they work. And Mr. Kelly mentioned it, subsidize the employee while they work. The fact is, in a structured and systematic way, we have never answered the base and age-old question that graduates always ask. How are we to get these jobs if we do not have the experience? And if you go back to that corporate model of all of those external impacts, how is it that the graduate just coming out of school will learn about this governance, this risk management, all that we're asking? We are saying that if we can apply some of these concepts earlier, this results in greater efficiency and talent building for the wider community, and thus the contribution to national development as it casts a wider net over the degreed workforce. And what does that look like? The academic fraternity is quite familiar. Internships. The internships provide, the internships provide a deeper relationship between tertiary institutions and private and public sector. Given the feeder program, Corporates must be able to influence the curriculum based on the changing needs of the workforce. So internships is a strong provider of one of those partnerships that can bridge that divide. Mentorships and coaching speaks for itself. We find that assigning mentors to graduates to our talent results in an exponential growth in their mindset change in how they lead. Partnership research. Tertiary institutions' exposure to leadership and talent management programs, use of organizational hurdles and solutions for case studies. So you find that there are issues that happens in organizations. And if we can partner with higher education institutions to solve, to assess, it will lead to better learning, faster learning, agile learning, as the professor said. Introduction to establishment of policies and procedures. The graduate comes in not knowing of these things. The internship and sustained internship will result in this type of learning. And of course, the understanding and the impact and influence of regulatory bodies on those policies. 4, possible funding of early stage research projects with partners in institutions. We know that academia loves to do research, and it is necessary. In fact, we learn from that research. And so if we can have early stage partnerships, there's early stage funding as well. Introduction to transformational and transactional leadership. And you find that this happens in partnership with the organizations when the graduate is exposed. We talk about holistic learning and values, early involvement in environmental, social, and governance policies and projects. And as we talk about SDG, and we look at diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is a part of those sustainable development goals, we see what the young graduates coming into the workspace value. And diversity, equity, and inclusion is a major part of what they value and what they stand for. We also want that they're involved earlier in voluntary activities. You will have graduates who come to the fore and that's not part of their arrangement. They want a fair day's work for fair day's pay, but don't involve us in any extracurricular for the greater good for the learning. We want to make sure that that is a part as it adds to nation building and the development of the whole self. Corporate social responsibility initiatives, getting their early involvement and in their partnership with the institutions will also lead to this. So when we looked at the benefits of all of this, of all of the options laid before us, we see that partnership with corporates give all higher education institutions access to more resources to fund their research, diversify their research areas. They also receive industry feedback and guidance on their inventions, helping them to improve further. 2, industry partnerships allow these institutions to improve their students to real-time industry jobs. And we're talking about this as one of the metrics that you could possibly use to measure whether the universities are, their employability metric is sufficiently high. Most students involved in incubator projects are often offered a role within the company after graduation, since they've had time to adjust to the company culture. Students turning into full-time employees as a result of the partnership can be a powerful PR tool for the higher education industry. High placement numbers can be used to entice prospective students and possible corporate partners. And finally, partnering with companies allows these entities to conduct networking events, which are extremely important for student career prospects. So with this, I thank you.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much, Mrs. McIntosh Gordon, for that very excellent presentation. We've had very poor Very interesting presentations, colleagues, taken from different perspectives, but all speaking to the theme of how we can strengthen quality in our teaching and learning as we focus on that graduate effectiveness imperative. I am now going to invite Mr. Najee Murray to take us to the Q&A. And if you still have questions, comments for the question and answers, please, for the presenters, please use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen, and we'll be happy to take those right now. Mr. Murray, will you please take it and take us through those questions?
Not a problem, Dr. Clark.
Thank you, sir.
Afternoon, everyone. Well, good morning, rather. So we have quite a few interesting questions here this morning. The first question is directed to the UCJ, and I'm going to prompt Dr. Minot to answer it for us. It goes, how does the UCJ relate to institutions of higher education that place developing courses and degree programs that are market relevant in your accreditation protocol and re-accreditation visits? Dr. Minot?
Yes, thank you very much for that question. As was stated by so many of the presenters, the UCJ, I hope you're hearing me.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
Okay. Based on the UCJ standards for accreditation, we do checks and make recommendations as it relates to, for example, the curriculum. We do ensure that the institutions have a cycle of review of their curriculum. We check to ensure that they do have in place policies and procedures for the development and review of programs in their institutions. And in particular, we want to ensure that they have industry input. Do they have advisory boards? And we check to ensure that those boards or committees are in place. We even check to ensure that there are minutes of these committees, just to make sure that that is there. Because we do acknowledge that the programs need to be current and that they are taken into consideration new developments in the particular disciplines. We look at the teaching resources. Are they current as well? In terms of the course outlines, whatever is placed on the course outline as reading materials, are they current? Are they dated? Technological infrastructure, and as you can see, I'm going down the line based on Professor Barrett's presentation. The technological resources, we would take somebody who is an expert in terms of technology, online teaching, and so on, to be a member of the team of evaluators to check on their technological infrastructure, if it's adequate. Are persons being trained to be able to use the technology, both internal, the faculty, as well as students? We check on the quality of the faculty. Are they qualified in their disciplines? Are they experienced? Or do they have teaching experience and ability? We check, we talk to students to ensure we get feedback from students and graduates, and that is so very critical. Are they comfortable? Are they happy? Are they getting return on their investment? Are they getting what they desired when they entered the program? So that when they finish their programs, are they getting jobs in the areas that they were trained in? So we look at all of these. These are just examples and more to ensure that the institution is providing quality training, and also that they are preparing the students to be able to get jobs. So graduate effectiveness is very critical for us at the UCJ. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Minot. I see a question here. I think I would like to ask Mr. Kelly and also Professor Barrett to answer. It says, how can quality education improve Jamaica's global competitiveness? Dr. Barrett, sorry, Professor Barrett can go ahead.
Okay, thank you. You know, it goes without saying that and that education is critical to the advancement of a country. And when you look across the globe, in economies where education and education at all levels is highly supported, you see it in the economics of those countries. And it's important that, but one of the things that's critical, you know, is the type of education that's required at a time. And that's why it is going to be essential. I think it was, I'm forgetting the name of the male presenter, Mr. I have it. I wrote it, Mr. Kelly. Yes. He spoke about the government might have plans, but they have to share it and share it in time. And that is because, you know, it's one of the things that I reflect on. I too hear the government with some plans. And my question is always, so where's the education agenda that matches that? That's going to enable that. That's going to push that forward. I've listened to it. I've even written to the Prime Minister, but the letter is in my house. I've written questioning for this agenda. For example, the 5 in 5 that was there. What was the education agenda that would support that? In my own studies, my doctoral study, what I looked at was the role of adult education in moving us from an agrarian society to an industrial society. I want to say that the government at the time recognized the connection. And hence, one of the institutions that was established is what was called the College of Arts, Science and Technology, which is now the University of Technology, because it recognized that it needed senior level technologists to be in industry. And so you needed to have a cadre of qualified persons. So governments that have a finger there on the pulse of economic growth see the relationship to education. And it's not just education, because I tell you, colleagues, if we are doing general education within a context of technology advancement, within a context of even the 21st century, let's use it at that, then education will not be meeting the objectives and would not be putting us in a place to be competitive. So my response to that is that it does so when the entire agenda of the country is tied to the agenda of the education sector, particularly at the higher education level. But we know that if the students don't come with a particular readiness, it interferes. So it flows right down. And that's how I'll do it in a summary form.
Thank you so much, Professor Barrett. Mr. Kelly.
I'm inclined to say ditto that. Feel not much more you can. Because once the components are there, you know, people, once the components are there, all the necessary inputs are there, you know, as I think it was Carla pointed out, you know, the emphasis on internship. Once all of those are there, then the outcome is really what we want, because
that's right. It's
at the table indicated what needs to go in so everybody can get what needs to come out. So I don't have anything else to add to that.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kelly. Our next question says, how relevant is it to ensure proper alignment of instructional strategies with assessment methods for graded effectiveness? I'm going to ask Dr. Martin to give us an answer, please.
I think it's something, of course, which is very relevant. This goes hand in hand with Charmaine's emphasis on constructive alignment, of course. I think it's about coherent teaching learning systems. And I think that's a general principle independent of employability concerns or not. I think that's a basic element of academic quality, of coherence, internal coherence of programs. But I think our the discussion today is about also the external coherence of programs, which is also the alignment with labor market needs. And as I said, it's not something so easy to investigate. You can, of course, involve the employers, and you can, of course, involve the former graduates, the alumni, and collect a lot of data. Yet you are making decisions that engage the future. And there is a certain level of uncertainty about, really how job profiles are going to evolve. And that's something that I have mentioned already. And some of the elements, I mean, the discussion that we have, I mean, it with us for quite some time already is the discussion about, foundational skills, that help us to retrain ourselves for an evolving labor market. And maybe that's something we have to keep also in mind for this external coherence, that we have to balance, find an appropriate balance between, on the one hand, training for skills which are immediately useful, and on the other hand, also keeping the capacity to adapt to future requirements. And that means really a relatively broad training. So we have a tension here, and I think we have to acknowledge that it is a tension, and it's a tension that plays out in different types of training programs as well. So just to maybe have built a little bit, I have to use the opportunity of this question, which is a little bit targeted for a more broader opening in the debate, but I think it's something important to recognize. So I stop here. And you can ask more questions, or I will give more answers which do not necessarily relate to the question. So
Thank you so much, Dr. Martin. Right, our next question is from Mrs. Carol McIntosh Gordon. It reads, in higher education, we generally assess students in relation to their cognitive, communication, and professional skills. Many employers are focused on behavioral attitudinal competencies, that is emotional intelligence. In Bible colleges and seminaries, we emphasize the latter as well as we call formation. Do you think that all higher education institutions and quality assurance entities should focus on these as integral to the graduate effectiveness imperative? Yes. They may not be as measurable as we would like. One source says it is tricky business, but we learned yesterday that not everything that can be measured counts, and not everything that counts can be measured.
Interesting point, but actually you can indeed measure these competencies, and it's simply through feedback. As I had presented, we do have a triangle on how we measure these core competencies, and one is through coaching and feedback, peer review. So in your peer review, what happens is that we do a continuous assessment on a behavior and how we want to change a particular behavior. We look at steps that we would use to change that behavior. And then we use peer review, we use supervisor review. How am I now? So it's a continuous assessment. How am I now, as opposed to where I had started before. So that gives you a sort of measurement tool in which to assess somebody's behavior, and if that behavior, soft skills, have changed. So whether it's a positive behavior that you want to reinforce, or it's a not so positive behavior that you want to eliminate, that sort of measurement through peer review and supervisory review can actually measure whether that behavior is being checked. So yes, indeed, Sir Williams, you can measure it.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mrs. McIntosh Gordon. Our next question says, I listened to the last two presenters provide some useful information about what skill competencies industry would expect our graduates to enter with. I wonder, though, how much more consideration needs to be given to internships that are funded to ensure students who are without the means to take up unpaid work experience throughout their university journey are not any further marginalized. I'm going to ask Mr. Kelly and Dr. Carol McIntosh to provide us with an answer. Sorry, Mrs. Carol McIntosh.
Yes, I wish I was a doctor, but no. All right, so we do subsidize that in the VM group, because we're very, very much aware of it. What we want to understand, what we want our audience to understand is that it is a partnership. It's part of the school curriculum. So you can consider it part of the program, the learning program that is offered as part of higher education. But yes, in simple terms, we do subsidize it because we are aware that there are students who struggle and need to be subsidized in that regard.
And similarly, as Carla said, we do. There are some, I believe, some entities do have it as part of the curriculum. So you facilitate that part, it's like a course component. But for, let us say, when you get to the summers and so on, we certainly pay for that employment. We don't have students working for free. We have skills that we work with, and we try within the industry to try and ensure as many of them can get employment as possible. So provide some support there. So no, it doesn't go without. And I don't know if the question also was prompted by something I said earlier, which was relating to graduates. So you have graduated and you can't find that job. My suggestion there was knock on doors and say, listen, I'm a graduate, can't find any job, I'm willing to work for free or for a nominal fee so I can develop some experience. So that's it. So we don't expect them to just come to us for free. It's part of the investment that we make in the youth in our country.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kelly. It reminds me both when I was in university and we had to complete a internship as a part of our final year program to be eligible to graduate, but also give us an insight as to what it is like within a particular firm. I think experiences such as this, really contribute to the overall development of the student, making them more effective. There are several things I wouldn't have known if I had not gone into the industry and see how it operates, right? But I want to ask both Professor Barrett and also Dr. Martin, to tell us what are their opinions. How should institutions document data regarding student employability?
Well, if I might go first and just speak of the things that come to my mind is, as Carla said, those are things that those are attributes that we are able to assess as we go along and we engage our students in the learning environment. So for example, teamwork. Now, one of the things that, well, certainly I and those who I interact with, we engage the students in what is called group work. I was about to say when Carla was sharing or somebody else, the thought came to mind that what happens when they come out here is that they are so tired of group work in which everybody doesn't carry their weight. And so they don't want to hear anything about teamwork again. But within the school system, within the academic setting, we do engage our students in teamwork via groups and group assignments and assignments in which they are given tasks and each person must take the task and they are given a grade for their participation, those kinds of things. That's one way. And also collaboration. Then in terms of the creativity, it really is around the assignments and those things that we check for in those rubric, and we look for those kinds of qualities that come out in the way the students engage with the content, how they engage with each other, and how they engage with the lecturer. So that's the way that it's built in.
Thank you
but
so much.
I think I think it was Dr. Martin who says that you take the answer, the opportunity to do some other things. So I'm going to do that too, to add something else. And it is after she has completed her answer, I would love to hear from Carla and Linworth, their response to this. I am saying that internships are organization specific. And this may not give the graduate the exposure that is required in another organization within the same sector. And so I wonder what is the role of the workplace in building the graduate capacity, and maybe just the mindset. Sometimes we get, and I'm in a lot of these conversations, so sometimes we get the feeling that they want the perfect graduate. as opposed to a graduate who comes ready to be built on. And so I'd love to hear their response to that. Over to you, Dr. Martin.
We're not hearing you, Dr. Martin.
I was so much taken away by your answer that I forgot about the question. I think it was about, you know, the collecting data on graduate employability and how institutions do that. Is that correct?
Yes.
That was the question. Yeah, I think I mean, in the different types of instruments that I have presented, I think I have given actually quite a number of data collection instruments, you know, and I think the important thing is here, so you have the graduate tracer studies. So this is, of course, you know, your graduates, and you have the employer surveys. And you can, I mean, what is also important is student course evaluations, even if sometimes also the students get a little bit tired of them. But I mean, they also give a feedback on the relevance, I mean, the perceived relevance of students of a particular course, even if they cannot judge it with, you know, with regard to the labor market, as they are not in it most of the time. So I think it is this type of data collection instruments, and but I think they are also costly. You cannot run them too often, so you cannot, it's not feasible to do a graduate tracer study every year for, so you do it, institutions, when they do it, there are also mechanisms when these tracer studies are done by national organizations in many countries. And then the institutions are provided with data, but they are not running the tracer studies. But I think when the institutions run them, they run them every 5 to 10 years. So it is not something that they do every year. And yeah, and then it's, of course, also sometimes it can be also informal feedback. You know, for instance, higher education institutions run days, open door days, where they invite the employers, and then they have discussions with the employers, and they can engage on discussions on what employers think it may be missing. But then it's also important to talk to those employers who have a direct link with the graduates, and not the CEO who is maybe a little bit far away from interacting with young graduates. So, I mean, all these things, I think, are data sources that can be used to construct, you know, a feedback. And I think, as I said already, I think it's also important to put this data to discussion within the higher education community. Yeah? And so what do we have this data, so how do we interpret it? And here the quality assurance offices in the universities can play a role and try to put together data sets that help the academics to interpret them, because that's also a difficult thing, you know, to try to make sense of a diverse set of diverse data sets. So we need maybe some preparation also at this level, so that data can be interpreted also more easily at the level of higher education teachers. So I think there are quite a number of things. And so it's not only about the availability of data, it's about the use of data and how to foster the use within higher education institutions. I think that's a very, very, very important aspect, and often very much not well enough developed. So this whole question of using data and what type of uses are made, and closing the loop, you know, this is the expression that you hear a lot, closing the loop, is I think really important. So, and I stop here. Thank you very much for asking such an interesting question.
Thank you, Dr. Martin. We heard Professor Barrett pose a question to Mrs. McIntosh Gordon and to Mr. Kelly. We'd love to hear their responses.
Okay.
Mrs. McIntosh Gordon.
Sure. So, Prof, we are well aware of that conundrum. The students do not come in learning. And so that is why we have a very intense, in fact, I would like to brag, but you're going to call me biased. that VM has one of the best talent management programs that I have seen in the financial industry. I acknowledged it when I just came into this space, and I hold to it, having seen the richness of the program. And it's because of what Mr. Kelly also said. They come into the workspace not knowing, and we are aware that we have to subsidize that knowledge. And so we build that rigorous talent management program because we want to build them up. Having said that, the internship, and what the internship does is catch it earlier. So what we do with the internship is, while they're in the higher institutions, if we can have that internship, we bring them in, getting that knowledge prior to coming fully into the workspace. It prepares them for anywhere that they want to go, even if it's not the institution that they get that they're hired into, but it prepares them richly for the work world. The other thing is that you spoke about the skills being not transferable. That one leaves me in a bit of quandary, because I say that to say, in being very real, no experience is wasted. And so if you go to a financial institution, while there will be variances in how the institution operates, certainly we're expecting that the graduates will know how to play between the lines, and knowing what happens in organization, and use that knowledge and leverage that knowledge across institutions. I can say it because it happened to me. I went to one financial institution. What I learned there, in fact, you find that there's such rich training grounds. What you learn there, you're able to apply to other institutions, even knowing that there are nuances of those other institutions. So I find it a bit difficult to appreciate that they aren't able to transfer those skills, having received them in one institution.
And in support of what Carla has said, also, I find that you find in an industry the fundamentals generally are the same. And so it's just how you build each one fleshes out that may be different from corporate to corporate. Certainly for the construction industry, how you execute pretty much is around the same kind of skeleton, really. And so you may engage a particular software for this task here. Over there, probably don't use any software, and you work with the basics, and depends on the scale of what you are handling, that kind of thing. So we find that it's pretty much transferable. And what's critically transferable is the soft things, the critical thinking skills, the communication skills, the respect, how you handle your human resource, which is pretty much your most valuable asset. And so I can't see where, as I say, there's no experience that's useless, so to speak. So everything does help across. That's been my experience. Awesome.
Right, is that it, Mr. Murray?
I apologize, my mic was muted.
Oh.
Thank you very much, Dr. Clark. We have time just for 2 more questions, Dr. Clark, that's fine.
It has to be the very last one, because we do have the launch of the hire me. So
yes, we'll just do one.
It has to be the very last one. Colleagues, thank you very much for your questions. We only have time for one more, please.
So we'll do the question for that says, I have heard of the need for not only technical competencies, but also soft essential skills. However, I have heard little, if any, emphasis on the character development as it relates to the values and ethics, for example, at the tertiary level. Jamaica currently has some educated scammers. Do not tertiary institutions also have a responsibility in this regard? We're going to ask Professor Barrett to give us an answer.
I totally agree, absolutely agree. that tertiary education has a responsibility but I would not say that those things are separate from these employability skills, you see, because we wrap them around employability. But if you take it from my presentation, which says those skills and competencies that allow us to build a humane society, then it's taking us right there. And it is some of these employability skills of how to interact with each other, how to problem solve. And we're not talking only about solving a mechanical problem, a technical problem. It's talking about problems between each other. It's understanding integrity and ethics. And those things are built into many of the programs that I'm aware of in our system. Now, one of the things with education, it's something that I'm grappling with. And I'm saying, how do we? I want to argue that as much as tertiary or education or higher education has a role to play, that I believe they need to come through the system with those skills and competencies. So primary, secondary must do much to culturalize our students in these ethical ways of being, in understanding that there are corporate values that we must honor. And I find that where that is, I believe that is absent in our school system in terms of when we get them. Many of them are already, I'm sorry, some are crude, some are this, some are that. And the time we engage with them might not be enough to create that shift. One of my students said to me at one point, said, Miss, coming into university, it changes your technical skills, changes your other kinds of skills. But he was challenged indeed to see how his colleagues and himself were being impacted in those areas, just as you are concerned. And so I believe we do need to do more in higher ed, but I also am a firm believer that what happens at the lower levels is crucial in this process.
Thank you so much, Professor Barrett. That's all the time for questions we have. We invite our presenters to, if they can, answer the questions within the chat, right? So we can have we can have everybody satisfied rather. Right, Dr. Clark, over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Murray. And colleagues, I'm going to ask you, I truly want to thank you for staying with us. I'm going to ask you to do two things before we close, maybe three. One, could we ask you now to grant us a favor? We want to capture some images, we want to capture your faces for the records. So we're going to ask you if you would be kind enough just to open your camera for 10 seconds. Mr. Murray, get ready. Open your cameras, please, for 10 seconds. We want to just capture some images. And then we're going to ask you to do the evaluation that is now being put in the chat. We ask you, we really do need to get the feedback as to how we can improve things the next time around. So please grant us that favor as well. And then Mr. Murray is going to do one other activity. So can we have the cameras open? Mr. Murray, how are we doing with that? Do we have 129 cameras open there?
Not as yet, sir. We can do it some more.
Start your video because the host has stopped it.
Mr. Smith?
Go ahead.
Yes, we're not allowed to.
Okay.
I'm trying to open mine, but I'm not being allowed to.
Great.
The host has to give us permission.
Oh, host, please do what we need.
We've allowed now, so people can start doing it.
Okay, we only have 10 seconds, so, and look at that bright smile from Nadine Campbell.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Oh, bless you. Very good. All right. And then please, if you would look for the evaluation and give us some feedback as to how today went, we would be very grateful. I want to invite now Mr. Murray again. Mr. Murray is the Director of Public Relations and Communications at the UCJ, and he is going to be telling us about the Hire Me program. So, Mr. Murray. Over to you, sir. All yours.
Thank you so much, Dr. Clark. We at the UCJ have noticed, well, we recognize the need for quality, the quality that is needed to build our institutions and build our students for graduate effectiveness, right? Today, we will be launching our Hire Me campaign. This campaign focuses on the need for quality, and we have a short video presentation to formally launch our activity. The Quality Assurance in Higher Education Week is the UCJ's flagship event, and we saw it necessary, prudent, to come here today and launch and share with you our Hire Me campaign. Mr. Smith.
It is the role of the University Council of Jamaica to provide you with the most appropriate information about registered programs, institutions accredited by the Council. We hope that this information will guide you through your journey in the academic sphere. Hello everyone, I am Najee Murray. As Director of Public Relations and Communication, I am pleased to introduce to you the UCJ's Hire Me campaign. Let me guide you through the process that will allow you to declare confidently, hire me. The Hire Me campaign encourages individuals to know before you enroll and to ensure that their certification or qualification is equivalent and accredited, portable, backed by an ISO certified quality assured entity, and credible. In other words, EPIC. After consultations with public, private, and educational sectors, the World Economic Forum estimates that investment in critical skills for the future, such as collaborative problem solving and creative thinking, could add a $2.54 trillion increase in productivity to the global economy, with the Caribbean being amongst the regions with the most relative gains. It is through education and training that we become prepared for our duties and responsibilities in life. Vision 2030 aims to foster a society where Jamaicans are empowered to achieve their fullest potential. This can be achieved through the offering of world-class education and training. Therefore, the team here at the University Council of Jamaica, through the Hire Me campaign, wants to encourage you all, whether pursuing occupational or traditional certification or qualification, to know before you enroll or before pursuing a qualification or certification to ensure that your program is EPIC.
Thank you so much, Mr. Smith. Right, now we heard from some stakeholders as to why it is important to maintain quality in higher education. Mr. Smith, I'm going to ask you again to share the video share the video that we compiled sharing experiences of our stakeholders.
Traditional agriculture undeniably promotes and facilitates rural development as well as maintain biodiversity. However, educated agriculture is applying scientific principle to practice, making agriculture precise, sustainable, and therefore significantly more efficient. Educated agriculture can be considered as the key to food security and environmental sustainability. As a plant science student, I have had the opportunity to not only learn about the physiology and morphology of plants, but how the environment can impact plants and how plants affect the environment. I have had the privilege to engage in research pertaining to issues the local agriculture sector encounter. I have been exposed to current and future technologies in agriculture. The college has given my colleagues and I the opportunity to gain an understanding of hydroponics, aquaponics, greenhouse technology, drone technology, genetic engineering, and artificial insemination. We are also able to acquire knowledge on climate change, how we can respond and assist in sustaining our planet whilst maintaining domestic production.
Our internationally recognized programs include Master of Science in Physical Education and Sport, Bachelor's in Physical Education and Sport, and associate degree in recreation and sport coaching. As these programs are accredited by UCJ, they are internationally portable. We are currently embarking on seeking accreditation for a new program, the Bachelor of Science in Coaching and Sport Administration. The level of expertise that students will gain from engagement in this program fills the requirements and demands in the field of sport administration on international platforms. As we continue to seek accreditation for our new and upcoming programs, the institution is guided by the mantra, a sound mind in a sound body. Data from our ongoing Tracer study revealed that 86% of our graduates intentionally pursued employment in their area of specialization. As we continue to strengthen the qualities in teaching and learning pursuits of our higher education programs, we stay true to the policies of the University Council of Jamaica by safeguarding the quality and standard provided to our sports professionals, which include physical education teachers, sports massage therapists, coaches, personal trainers, and fitness instructors. Our graduates continue to exhibit the social, emotional, conceptual, and technical skills that are relevant for individuals to perform effectively on the global scale, thus increasing their earning potential.
The private sector remains reliant on a highly skilled and innovative workforce to propel its growth and contribution to national development. It is therefore crucial that our accreditation bodies prioritize the verification of our higher education institutions to ensure their adherence to the necessary standards and quality requirements. This is vital in ensuring that our graduates have access to the appropriate programs and opportunities. We believe that accessing accredited programs at the higher education level enables personal development and promotes economic, technological, and social change. It encourages the exchange of knowledge, research, and innovation, and equips individuals with the skills required to meet an ever-changing labor market. It is the key to economic security and a more productive future. Recent statistics point to approximately 19% of Jamaicans aged 19 to 24 being enrolled in tertiary education institutions, and that approximately 15% of the workforce have a tertiary education. Given that higher education can provide access to better paying jobs and more opportunities, it is important for more Jamaicans to attain higher education, which can also afford opportunities for social mobility. At the core of the PSOJ's Human Capital Development Committee is our focus on ensuring that Jamaica's education system produces graduates with the requisite knowledge and skills to drive the country's growth. The PSOJ stands ready and dedicated to partnering with the relevant stakeholders to afford access to equitable and quality higher education and lifelong learning opportunities. Undoubtedly, higher education will advance Jamaica's growth agenda and enable us to achieve a fundamental tenet of the Vision 2030 framework to secure a prosperous future for all citizens.
I think that it is important to go to university, and because for a number of reasons, it also increases your earning potential. I know a lot of people want to earn more. It increases your earning potential and it makes you more marketable, and it's absolutely something that you will not regret. I think that without a tertiary level education, it would have been difficult for me to, one, get a job at Television Jamaica and later excelled at the job. I won 5 major awards during my time at Television Jamaica, both at the national level and at the regional level. And I believe that my time at NCU, the training that I received in my undergraduate program, prepared me for that kind of experience in journalism. Now, I still wanted to pursue further education, and I still wanted more for myself and to also make myself more marketable. So on a British Achieving Scholarship, I pursued a Master of Science degree in Media Communication and Development at the London School of Economics and Political Science, the LSE. Now, when I was preparing to apply for the LSE, I was nervous. I started to rule myself out because one, LSE is ranked number 3 in the world for media studies, and it is also ranked number 2 in the world for social sciences, just below Harvard. So it's a top institution. But it's also part of why I chose it, because one, I wanted to make myself marketable in a very, very competitive global space. And I believe that being critical about the university, I think, make the world of a difference. I'm now back at the London School of Economics pursuing doctoral studies in my department at the LSE, again on another scholarship, this time from the London Arts and Humanities Partnership.
The greatest investment that any government can undertake is the development of its human capital to ensure that its workforce is highly skilled and competent and can contribute to the growth and advancement of the country. Within this context, the Heart and SDA Trust has been strategically preparing Jamaicans through its suite of programs, offerings, and initiatives that are fit for purpose and designed to meet current and future productivity needs of industries. The Heart and SDA Trust is delighted to be participating in the University Council of Jamaica's 18th Annual Quality Assurance in Higher Education Week, which is being held under the theme, Strengthening Quality in Teaching and Learning in Higher Education. As an organization, we recognize that in order to prepare graduates who are resilient, divergent thinkers, and are able to resolve and prefer solutions to complex organizational challenges, our programs must be undergirded by cutting-edge research and a robust quality assurance framework. Through the National Council on Technical and Vocational Education and Training, the programs at the Heart and SDA Trust are assessed to ensure relevance, consistency, and alignment with global standards. This ensures that the competency standards across our programs are industry-determined specifications of performance, which describe the skills, the knowledge, the attitudes, and leadership dispositions required by a worker in the performance of a particular role in the workplace. By so doing, the certifications that our graduates receive at the end of their programs provide them with the currency they need to secure meaningful work as they demonstrate competencies to qualify them for the internationally recognized National Vocation Qualification of Jamaica at various levels. Given the importance placed on maintaining quality across our program offerings, we remain resolute in providing a learning and teaching environment that is student-centered, where learners are aware of what is expected of them to meet the assessment requirements of their qualification. I am pleased to highlight that our graduates have been prepared at the highest standard and are able to secure employment opportunities from a wide career pathway to include computer technician, robotics, engineering, mechanical engineer, and computer engineers. During the period November to December 2022, some 19,300 trainees graduated from HEART programs for the 2019-2022 period. This represented graduates from programs aligned to various industries, namely manufacturing, tourism, agriculture, information, communication, and technology services. The Trust remains steadfast in accelerating Jamaica's progress towards sustained economic development and a more competitively trained, qualified, and enabled workforce. We look forward to our continued contributions to national development in providing quality training solutions and interventions.
Hi everyone.
higher education is critical in shaping the development of individuals and nations. For students or learners, as some people prefer, the primary objective of higher education is to acquire knowledge and skills that will help them build and thrive in their professional lives. Individuals increase their prospect of success by pursuing programs and courses that have recognition, ensuring greater opportunities of employability upon graduation. Employers are keen about the quality of education and training and the technical and social competencies that employees bring to their organizations. It is therefore essential that institutions, as they respond to societal and labor market needs locally and internationally, deliver quality programs and training that have the endorsement and recognition of a credible authority obtained through a rigorous process of quality assurance. In many countries, including Jamaica, quality assurance is often synonymous with accreditation. It is the mandate of the University Council of Jamaica, the UCJ, to assure quality in higher education and to provide relevant information to diverse stakeholders. Our aim is to assist students in higher education institutions, whether those institutions are academic, professional, or vocational, to obtain recognized and portable qualifications and increase their employability. We therefore encourage students to know before you enroll in the particular chosen program or course or training and to reach for a higher you. Thank you.
Thank you so much to everyone for participating in the official launch of our Hire Me campaign. It is great to have you here. I would know that persons like you are the greatest stakeholders to have as we champion quality in higher education. I just want to also remind us all that feel free to participate, reach out to the UCJ, right? And to get on board with our Hire Me campaign. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Murray, and we are going to be hearing much more about this this program in the days ahead. So, colleagues, I want to thank you for being such an excellent audience and for bearing with us, staying the course with us. I know we've lost some for one good reason or another, but thank you all, and it is now just left for me to thank Mrs. Heron, our executive director, and her team. I want to single out the Day 2 team that focused on and facilitated the discussion on graduate effectiveness imperative. I want to thank Dr. Lisa Henlin, Mrs. Remeke McFarlane. I want to thank Dr. Minot, Mr. Murray. I want to thank all the presenters. We know we two had to leave. Dr. Michaela Martin. I want to thank Professor Shermaine Barrett. I want to thank Mr. Lenworth Kelly, Mrs. Carla McIntosh Gordon for their excellent presentations. Please note, colleagues, that the 3 slide presentations were placed in the chat. You just needed to have clicked on each and they would you download them. So if you haven't done that already, you may want to do that now. Thank you very much for completing the evaluation for us as well. As I also thank those who participated in the program, Reverend Dr. Brian Wallace. Thank you very much, Dr. Vivian Quarry from the council. Thank you very much for your participation in today's webinar. And thank you all the participants, and I want to thank the production team. Those are the ones who work behind the scene, Mr. Christian and his team, who makes it all possible. thank you very much. Tomorrow, after this hard work and bearing with us for today, tomorrow come back for the awards presentations. So it is my pleasure to have guided you through this. Thank you for bearing with us. We went beyond the time that we had scheduled, but I thank you for your patience and your understanding. Very interesting day, and let the discussions continue about graduate effectiveness, that imperative, that making our graduates more employable, making them more effective in contributing to the development of Jamaica, land we love. Amen. Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a very good afternoon.
Thank you, Dr. Clark. A very big thank you as well for ably leading us through the day's proceedings. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Clark.
Bless you, my pleasure.